Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed and today we are doing Philosophical Midwifery. We're in chapter 4 and we are tackling the last of the 4 sections of Philosophical Midwifery. All human beings, as part of the deal of being a human being, gets a kind of problem called a pathologos that blinds us from any reason and evidence that shows that this fundamental belief that we see through, that we speak through, that we act through is wrong. It's a certain fundamental belief about ourselves, reality, and the nature of the divine that we take for granted as self-evidently true, and anything that comes up in our experience that proves that it's wrong, we are blind to, which causes confusion and often defensiveness and even aggression. So we become big fat jerks towards the very thing that we most need to listen to, making us stupid barbarians as a species. And as the cause of that kind of problem is understandable and predictable, meaning our life is on a kind of train tracks of fate where we repeat the same cycles of problems over and over and over again. Our choice of goals remain the same. The way in which we fail to reach meaningful goals remains the same. The sorts of people that we're attracted to. Our idea of beauty and justice remains fixed and stuck in an image that's wrong. You could say we are all zombies. Now, the book uses the term somnambulist, which is fancy for a sleepwalker. But I like the word zombie because as we've been reading, it functions as a kind of psychic parasite. It saps our psychic energy that we could be using towards reaching our most meaningful goals, which is the exact inverse of those things. Seeking, through the movement, through right opinion, understanding, verification, direct experience or knowledge, and beyond that, the true nature of self, the true nature of reality, the true nature of beauty and justice and goodness. That's what we should be spending our time doing. But because we all get a pathologos, we don't do that. And if we try to do those things, it distracts us in various ways, including sapping our energy. So it functions as a psychic parasite. It's also the most powerful force in the universe, because there are many people who've had this or that experience of those things. A direct encounter with reality, with justice itself, with beauty itself, with eternity itself, waking up to the recognition of your true nature. However, our problems will bring us right back down to our old way of being, keeping us stuck, meaning this kind of belief that chains us to our ignorance and suffering is even more powerful than the most powerful force in reality, mind knowing itself as pure ousia or pure being, meaning it trumps it. It is even more powerful than that. So, super important to look at. And if it's necessary to address our pathologos to become free, if it's necessary to address our pathologos to reclaim our psychic energy to reach any meaningful goals, our most meaningful goals, and if every human being gets one, we can conclude the meaning of our existence, the meaning of life as a human being, is that. Or at least this is a main part of it. So, we are doing what we are supposed to be doing as human beings on this channel, which is neat. Yay for us.
You've been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now?
I don't think that's appropriate, Emma, because we just said we're doing what we are supposed to be doing here, which is neat. So, given that being the case, we better learn what exactly we have to do to free ourselves from that problem, unzombify us. And by the way, you could also call us an NPCs in that it chains us, it binds us to a certain script that we play out in everything we do. Our everyday life, our choice of goals, our choice of relationships, the random thoughts that come into our mind stars a certain character that we identify with. We have to, for it to distract us, we have to get wrapped up in the movie. Also, most of our dreams are messages about that pathologos, false image of ourselves that molds our personality, molds our the way we hold ourselves, our character, shapes us, and our whole life we become more and more entrenched, attached, and identified with this false image of self. Meaning, being a human screws us up. Or can free us in a way that we perhaps can only do as human beings. Experiencing language and self-reflection in a unique kind of way that perhaps is even unique to our species, allowing us to reflect, learn what is needed to reflect and understand in order to free ourselves from that problem. So, we have a potentially dangerous situation as an existing human being, but a potentially brilliant, wonderful, super beneficial and illuminating situation. Because not only do we all get this pathologos, we also get what we need to solve it. What is needed to solve it? How do you solve it? Well, that's what we're learning here specifically. We're in chapter 4, which is the 12 steps or the within 4 categories of what every human being has to go through in order to remove their problems. But even more primarily, what do we need to solve our problems? So, what specifically do we need in order to address our problems? Taking what could be a very tragic situation existing as a human being, in which we become more and more entrenched in what's false, identified with what's false, while acting unjustly towards ourselves and others. Very, very dangerous for our development, for our identity, and for any consequences we may face as a result of being so unjust when we drop dead, if there is any accounting for or facing the kind of life that we live. The very dangerous and tragic situation we're in. In fact, you could say the pathologos explains the nature of a Greek tragedy. A tragic flaw that the tragic hero is blinded from, is stuck to because they do not address any divine aid into their tragic problem, their tragic flaw, and they remain tragically blind to that flaw, which plays out in tragedy. That's the basic model of the tragic drama. It's our drama. That's the pathologos. So given that situation, sucks to be human, unless we're also given what we need to turn it around. Go from the tragic hero to the philosophical hero. The kind of hero like Achilles in the Iliad, who is able to reflect on his problems in a certain way with the aid of his dreams and dream analysis, to discover that unsuspected pathologos that we are not aware of, we have amnesia about, and address it with a certain kind of understanding that can free us from it and make us even better than when we started. What exactly do we have that allows us to turn around and reach our highest excellence? What are we using when we read this book? To master philosophical midwifery, the giving birth, it's an expression Socrates coined, giving birth to this false idea and getting rid of it, aborting the sick baby that cannot survive the light of day. Well, two fundamental things we need is language, reason, which is necessary for conversation, dialogue, dialectic. So we call that the logos. We can participate in the rationality of our universe because we have language. But hey, don't people use their language to just play out their tragic problem, their pathologos? So we need something else. The ability to apply that language to self-reflection, which is called ousia. Ousia is the Greek word that defines the capacity, the cognitive function that we have to reflect on our own selves and our own existence. So that ousia combined with logos is what we need to solve our problems. Now, those of you who are also following along with our reading of not only dream analysis but philosophy on this channel might recognize that, hang on a second, logos and ousia, aren't they features that are in the higher levels of development? The second and third hypotheses. So the hypotheses of Parmenides are 9 stages of development that Socrates' own teacher Parmenides laid out for us. Explained it completely rationally. No metaphor, no analogies, no explanation of how and why it has to be the case, just simple, pure reason and logic for each of the different categories that we go through as human beings. The first being his hypothesis of the one self, the second being the experience of pure being or mind, the first creation, although creation might not be the right word, the better word is emanation, the first overflow of the one self into being itself, which of course is what we study in philosophy. Philosophia, love of wisdom, that's the knowable experience. The third hypothesis is how it functions, how pure being functions in our everyday world, within the gap between each moments that we experience. We don't experience the gap through our physical senses. We experience the result of the gap. So each moment is created and destroyed, and there's a gap between each moment, just like the gaps in a film. In the film strip, we watch a film and it looks like there are people running around, shooting the bad guys, and doing whatever else happens in a movie. You know how movies work. You've seen a movie before. But then you can ask, well, that's interesting. But are you really seeing movement? And we would say, no, of course not, you crazy person. We have the illusion of movement created by our minds. What we're really seeing is a frame, and then a lack of a frame, and then a new frame, and then a lack of a frame, really, really fast, 32 times a second or 50 FPS, frames per second, giving the illusion of movement. The recognition that is how all movement works is the third hypothesis. And there are some spiritual traditions that think, well, this is enlightenment. To be able to recognize that movement is essentially an illusion, and the ability to see the gap, see that second hypothesis within the gap, is a brilliant discovery of something that not many people are aware of. So for some spiritual traditions, famously Kashmir Sufism, which is a fun word, fun name, is their highest level of spiritual experience is that gap, which is the third hypothesis of Parmenides. And on this channel, we've read the introduction and the first hypothesis so far. Maybe later on we'll go back to reading the other ones. That third hypothesis is the functioning of pure mind or ousia. And that is how we get providence, or a kind of divine, divine's the right word, care, aid, guidance, benefit that's being bestowed to us at every moment. And that can be difficult to become aware of, considering what we said about the tragic implications of being a human being with a pathologos. But that's why we have to be doing dream analysis as one of the 4 pillars of the true art philodianoia, love of understanding. Philosophy, following the logos and ousia to the truth. Philosophical midwifery, using the logos and ousia to discover, understand, and remove our problems. Dream analysis, and of course, using everything that we've been learning in what we do, in what we share, in what we create, or mythology. Those are the 4 aspects of what we would say the human quest, or the art, or the spiritual discipline, or the model of development. Why is it that we have to be doing dream analysis? Many reasons, but one of the reasons is, well, no, we're good. One of the reasons is we get to experience for ourselves that divine providence functioning through the gap, because we experience a gap between waking and being awake, well, called being asleep. There's a gap between our waking life moments. And if we do our best to record as accurately as possible, hang on a second, my OBS keeps saying it's over. So if we do our best to address our dreams with integrity, which is a kind of raising ourselves to meet the mind of our dream master, by recording our dreams as accurately as we can and unpacking the meaning of our dreams. So I had to pause for a second. Why are we talking about the significance of understanding our dreams? Well, if we unpack those dreams in a certain kind of way, we will see 2 things: that our dreams are understandable. Every single dream of ours is understandable. Every part of our dream is understandable. You can only remember a small part of your dream. That's enough. You can only remember a few words. That'll do. That'll do, pig. It's enough because of how fantastically understandable dreams are. And if we do that, we gain the best kind of benefit. We gain our own spiritual guidance for our work in those 4 things: in removing our problems, reaching our highest goals, mastering dream analysis, and applying it in everything else that we do, in our relationships, in our creations, how we relate to ourselves in the world. So dream analysis is a necessary thing to prove to ourselves the third hypothesis. To kind of sharing in or participating in the third hypothesis, which itself is the functioning of the second hypothesis, pure being, which would be the enlightenment experience for the Taoists, the yin-yang symbol, which is itself the emanation of the first hypothesis, the hypothesis of the one self, which is Parmenides' own hypothesis. And you could say, well, is there a spiritual tradition that is solely focused on just that? Just like there are many traditions, there are traditions that reflect all of the levels. You could say, well, nirvana, kind of the Buddhist experience of nirvana in a way, but not really, because it lacks the logos. It's something they miss. And of course, going through all of them, which is our destiny or purpose as human beings, to experience and understand every level of the 9 levels, going all the way from those top ones all the way down to materialism and reductionism and nihilism being at the very bottom. We can ask the question, is there something that we gain beyond those 9 from having gone through all of them and sharing with our friends, with our fellow man, our experiences of going and our understanding and our mastery of having gone through all of them. So, first hypothesis, second hypothesis, third hypothesis, these are the ones characterized by different levels of ousia and logos. The fourth hypothesis, which you can understand as a kind of distortion of the second, a shadow of the second, is characterized by groupthink, like religions or pathologos. We don't get to experience the second, that's out of our reach, but we can imitate it by kind of coming together as a pure unity in a really shitty way that isn't really real, not really unified, but by coming together as a group and saying, we are number one. The Jews are the chosen people. MAGA is number one. My family's way of being is the best family, and I'll beat you up if you say my mum isn't a saint. Which is our way of being that we are at as human beings in our culture. The 3 Abrahamic religions seem to be the way of being that's ruling our world currently, tragically. The pathologos can be understood. It actually ticks a few of those boxes, but few of the different hypotheses. But you could also understand it as a kind of group clan loyalty to your family clan. And another characteristic of it is blocked from logos and ousia. Meaning we are stuck in our problems, being in the fourth hypothesis. And in order to free ourselves from our problems, we have to, move into the third. Master logos and ousia, tap into that divine providence, utilize it, become like it ourselves to address our problems of the fourth hypothesis and below, but also to go beyond the third, to the second, the first, and then question mark. So we're screwed. That's the end of this podcast. I'll see you later. Oh, no, hang on a second. There is a way out of that problem. Even though that level of development is specifically blocked from the levels of development that do have logos and ousia, there is a kind of logos, a kind of rational ordering, a kind of understandability in our pathologos problems. And there is a kind of self-reflection to maintain it, to block us from learning, to cause our problems through a self-fulfilling prophecy. Our kind of self-sabotage as we reflect on the world through our projections, through our distortions, through our false interpretations, to anticipate and experience the reality in a negative way, in a false way, making our problems inevitable, making those beliefs that we have about ourselves a self-fulfilling prophecy, and blocking us from any logos or ousia that can challenge our deeply held, unsuspected pathologos that are linked to certain images of our loved ones that we care about so deeply. It takes an immense amount of courage and a rare kind of character to even begin to question your dear mummy and daddy. Which is why the MAGA people are calling Trump daddy. That's no coincidence. And it's why the MAGA people are blocked from any reason and evidence that shows that he is not actually functioning to benefit as he's lying that he is, as he is supposed to be doing, and as he's lying about doing. So understanding the pathologos is what we need to do to solve our problems. It's how to solve human problems as well as our individual ones. But also, in order to have and maintain our pathologos problems, there is a shallow amount of ousia and logos that we can tap into and utilize to move out of the fourth hypothesis into the third and beyond, where we can truly discover real logos and ousia, experience it at different depths, master it at different depths, use it for our experiences of whatever dimension that we might experience in this life and beyond, to reach the oneself, and of course, use it, turn around and help others, and maybe even go beyond. What does that mean? That means if we are a human being and, well, if there are any alien species who are in a similar predicament, who've evolved to that level of evolution where you have language and that capacity of self-reflection, then our tool, the new paradigm for solving human problems, the spiritual method, is philosophical midwifery. Why? Because it's literally the art and practice that can utilize that shallow ousia and logos, which is needed to make the jumps to higher levels of evolution or higher levels of cognitive function. So, we are in a tragic position where we have everything we need to be the nastiest, most terrible people to ourselves and the world, to become more entrenched in our false opinions, our false images, to bake it into our soul, into our way of being, molding us, becoming identified with it, causing the worst problems in the world. And if we ever have to account for how we live in this world, causing terrible things that might happen beyond when we drop dead. However, within that, we have what we need to go completely in the other direction and complete our evolution. Humanity, being alive as a human, is therefore a fascinating double-edged sword in that way. We have the capacity in having the pathologos, in having this tragic problem. Within it is a hidden gift. That shallow ousia and logos needed to go the other direction. Overcome any false belief we have about self and reality that other souls at other higher levels of evolution or other spiritual dimensions may be having, that may be limiting them from fully experiencing their level. going beyond their level, reaching the end of their level, upgrading themselves. We can overcome all of those problems as human beings. Not only that, every single moment we are getting help. We are getting problems, we are getting distractions, we are getting tangents, we are getting daydreams, we are getting fantasies. When we sleep, we are getting dreams. All of them are messages from self and mind to us to say, hey, address this goddamn problem. Here are some clues. Especially dreams. Meaning, or in our waking life, our everyday thoughts and tangents reflect our problem, keeping our problem alive, which is the tragic aspect of it. Ain't no way out of our problems and suffering. Our dreams contain more of the clues in how to solve that problem, so they work together in that way. Again, highlighting the double-edged sword. Ain't no way out of your problems without understanding them. So, giving us what we need for problems and to get out of our problems is the human condition. And all of that we're learning from reading, which requires ourselves to empty our own dumb opinions that we carry with us, emptying our cup so we can fill it up with these right opinions from somebody who's mastered this process, someone who's made the journey to LA himself. Turn around and say, hey, this is how you get there. Which is enough to help us, because it's true, you can still get to LA. But what we are doing is moving from right opinions to understanding by looking for that logos. Seeing if we can arrange, organize, hierarchically arrange and order these right opinions within the structure of understanding itself, the dialectic. Nailing it down, making it our own, because you see through your understanding, you act through your understanding. And that's what we've been doing in this chapter, Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the stages of philosophical midwifery, and we have been looking for the dialectical structure within that, so we can do that very thing. Turn it into our own understanding that we can use, because understanding is itself a springboard to those even higher levels of ousia. Just as the third hypothesis is characterized by the logos, by understanding, it's also the doorway into the second, pure being. It's also the doorway from pure being to the first, which is why those spiritual traditions that use whatever technique to have that immediate, all at once experience of the second hypothesis think that's the end and they can't go beyond it. You need to be able to reflect on whatever level you're in, understand it, ask questions, become curious about what are the causes and principles that are presumed by your level of being in order to wonder about and traverse beyond that level to a higher level. Which is why every spiritual tradition that personifies, characterizes each of those levels, they're stuck. As a principle, you can't go beyond Jeebus. You can't go beyond the Buddha. You can't go beyond Muhammad. His level of understanding and vision, his hypothesis of Parmenides he has reached is the end, and anything above it is heathen, heresy. We will burn you at the stake. Except if your tradition is this one, the love of understanding. Because we want to understand every tradition. We want to be able to recognize whatever state of mind we're in. If we're depressed in a nihilist state, if we're all the way to having a blissful second hypothesis experience. All of it we want to understand and wonder about and share an understanding with our friends about and ask questions about and go beyond. That's maturity. That also applies to our pathologos. Hey, our way of being in the family, don't go beyond it, or we'll get you. We will ignore you, or we will mock you, or we will threaten you, or we will exile you, or we will kill you. Ever gone to a pub and walked in a different way than other people? Talked about different things than other people? Immediately, they turn into crabs in a crate. Pulling you down. You can't go beyond us. That's heresy. That's the pathologos. It can bind you to any level. Therefore, it doesn't matter if you're a guru or a yogi or a priest or a pastor or an imam or a rabbi or the coolest person at the pub. The only way out of barbarism, violence, oppression, injustice, and stagnation is philosophical midwifery. The love of understanding. Now, I've listed a whole bunch of people, which means there is no reason for you to get butthurt if I mention the one that you happen to be born into. It's a principle, it's not personal. And there's a reason why you were born into this particular one, and understanding that is part of your way out. And having gone out of that tradition, you are more well equipped to turn around and help people who are also stuck, because you know what it's like to be stuck in Judaism, to be stuck in Catholicism, to be stuck in Protestantism, to be stuck in nihilism, to be stuck in materialism. You name it. You know what it takes because you've gone through it. Through philosophical midwifery, which requires a certain amount of character, courage, perseverance, discipline, fun, joy, wonder.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
This is all needed. But ultimately, all of those things are just various aspects of the one characteristic of the soul that's needed for this development. Out of our ignorance into enlightenment, out of barbarism into the true human race, out of fate and suffering to reach our highest purpose, seeking truth. That's the main one. Seeking truth above all else, and recognizing when you're blocked from truth, when you don't like hearing the truth, when you fight against the truth, when you're blind from the truth. That's the game. That's the kind of soul you need just to get in the front door, to begin the game. Seeking truth above all else. With fun, of course. It's the best game in town. If you do that, you will discover for yourself that hidden within what maintains your problems is exactly what you need to free yourself from it. A kind of logos enousia, a kind of rationality and self-sustaining self-reflection that we can use in philosophical midwifery to make the jump out of the gap. Every level of those hypotheses, all 9 stages of development, outlined purely rationally by Parmenides. You can jump through philosophical midwifery with the aid, of course, of philosophy, so we actually read those 9 hypotheses so we get the map. Dream analysis, the specifics of your pathologos that you'll get clues about in your dreams and you'll get guidance through. But also, that's not enough. There is something that comes with sharing it that awakens you to a new level of self or a new level of humanity as well. Meaning it isn't just philosophy, midwifery, and dream analysis, it's sharing it. Mythology. Making your stories about it. Making your conversations over coffee about it. Cheers. Making your streams about it, which is what we're doing here. So, with that introduction out of the way, that's what we're doing. That's why we're doing it. Now, there has to be a certain level of trust to begin with. You don't know yet. You got to trust that it's worth doing. Why go through this process of getting rid of my beloved beliefs? I like pretending I know stuff. My mummy and daddy pat me on the head when I'm a good Jew, when I'm a good Muslim, when I'm a good Protestant, when I'm a good Scientologist. I like that. I like being a MAGA and being cruel to people as a sign of knowing, like my mummy and daddy who were ignorant. But they were cruel to me, and that's when they appeared their most knowing. Isn't it easier to be cruel to people than to actually benefit them, which necessarily requires that development of understanding and personal growth and character? Otherwise, how would you know what actually benefits? Wouldn't it be much easier not to do all that hard, fun, awesome work with awesome people, but just to stay entrenched in my bullshit ignorance that I got from my childhood when I was too young to know any better, and just be cruel in the same way my family was cruel to me? Isn't that easier? Isn't that the entire appeal of all fascism? You are the best and most knowing because you are cruel to immigrants, MAGA. Women, MAGA. Nazis. Palestinians, Jews. You're the chosen people, and you know because you get to be cruel to people. To non-Germans, Nazis. To Ukrainians, Russians. You name it. Because we all get a pathologos. This is a characteristics of all human societies who haven't yet awoken philosophical midwifery and philodianoia. Meaning this is what we need to do to master, to understand our human problems, our societal problems, our political situations. And we can. That's the fun thing. Love of understanding. I just mentioned earlier that there was a big rugby game tonight. The State of Origin. And the blue team had all of the most naturally talented, gifted individuals. And the red team didn't, but they unified. A certain thing happened to their captain right before the game that really sparked a kind of trust and openness and oneness within the squad, and showed that a champion team, a unified team, a champion team will defeat a team of champions. So too, hey, the most cruel, the most representative of individual pathologos, the most Hitler, the most Trump, the most Netanyahu, the most Putin, people have all the money and the power. Resources, not power. Individuals. But everyone in our species can come together in a love of understanding. That's not about teams or groups or fourth hypothesis bullshit. Understanding is what we all share in. Open to everyone. Addresses all problems. Your toaster's broken? What do? Send it to one of the concentration camps that Trump is setting up? No. Punch your toaster? No. shoot your toaster like John Diehard did in that movie? No, you understand the cause of the problem of your toaster. Understanding is exactly what we need to solve problems. It's what we need to understand ourselves, our most meaningful goals, the map, the hypotheses of Parmenides. It's what we need to understand how we traverse through them, philosophical midwifery. It's how we can come together as a champion team to defeat individuals. And by the way, even that language, defeat, doesn't work anymore. If they have already done the worst things, why waste it? In other words, we don't just shoot them like they would do. No, that's stupid. The way of solving problems is to look at the causes. They've already done the horrible things. So let's stop them from doing it. Take the gun away from baby. Okay, now let's use this so we don't have to go through Nazism again. Let's look at Netanyahu and Trump and Putin. And whoever else. You name one. Pick a culture, there'll be one. Why? Well, we're fighting Nazis again. Didn't we do that in World War I and II? In other words, we haven't learned.
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
This is the method of learning, growing, and addressing actual problems. Meaning the idea of justice as finding excuses to make human beings suffer is stupid and barbaric. True justice is this: reasoned reflection, logos and ousia, on causes and principles that necessarily are non-physical and eternally true. And mythology, using them in our laws, in our media, in our art, in our streaming. Necessarily so. Now, all of that you don't have to believe. You have to start with a kind of openness and trust to begin. But again, we are not projecting onto the text. We are reading the text as accurately as, without any interpretations if we can, without adding what's there or leaving out what isn't. Without leaving out what is there or adding what isn't, that's interpretation. That level of integrity to gain the right opinions, to organize it through the dialectic for understanding, and to go out and test it. In your own experience, that's knowledge. You don't have to believe anyone if you can see it, understand it, and you've experienced it. That applies to this reading. That applies to the movement through every level. Hey, if human beings experience nihilism, experience feeling, there's no meaning in anything, experience materialism, there's the world, but it's just a physical world, experience the second hypothesis, like the Taoists. If we can experience every level, and the way out of every level is through understanding, then we get experience and understanding of every stage possible. That's a unique thing that we have access to by being a human being existing. Which is neat. It also means there's no room for belief anymore. Don't need it. Do you have to believe what someone else tells you if you can experience it and see it for yourself? Of course not. But hang on a second. Aren't beliefs from other people exactly what is the cause of our problems? Because beliefs don't have to be true, and people can lie, either through their own ignorance or purposefully lying, to get you to act against your own best interests. Isn't that exactly what conservatism is? Isn't that what the history of religion is all about? Isn't that what the pathologos is? Yeah. But if we don't need belief anymore, we don't need to be manipulated against our own best interests at the expense of our own well-being and the survival of our species. Yeah, you're right, but that's a good thing. Then you'll say, oh yeah.
What? Wow.
Wow. But again, requires some trust. You need to trust. Now, reason trust, that should resonate in some level. It might not make complete sense, but part of what I say you're probably going to identify with. I didn't grow up Catholic, but I grew up in this weird religion cult that it does make sense. I wasn't one of the three big Judaism, Muslim, Catholicism, or Christianity. I wasn't one of those big three, but I did have my own way of being at my small town or in my family. And that resonates with me. I didn't completely understand all of those things. I'm not really familiar with the 9 hypotheses or Parmenides or Buddhism or Taoism or anything, but I have heard of these things. And I have had a few different experiences that I can't really explain and my family can't explain and the guys at the pub can't explain. So there's a reason to trust it, just as if you wanted to become a master mechanic, there's a reason for picking this mechanic. It kind of makes sense. He seems to be able to fix cars. Everyone else seems to benefit by bringing their cars to him. Their cars benefit. Similarly, that openness and trust, as well as the stakes or the reason for going through it, all of the things needed to build a house ain't going to come together unless you need a house to live in to begin with. To awaken your will, to utilize that trust, that's what you have to bring. Something in that little introduction will resonate, hopefully. Or something that you see will resonate. That motivation to go through it, to seek truth beyond all else, to go through the sacrifices needed, to learn and reflect and be better, become more intelligent, become more able to share an understanding and knowledge, to be able to use that to benefit, to become more beneficial and helpful, artful. Something in that has to motivate you personally. Look for that. Marry it with your trust, reasoned trust, because you don't know yet. When C-3PO came to Luke Skywalker, I can't remember how it started, and said, "You need to become a Jedi to defeat the Empire against Darth Vader." Luke didn't know how it was going to end. Didn't know anything about becoming a Jedi. There had to be some trust and some motivation, some reason to get up off the couch, to get out of that moisture farm, to get out of what he was familiar with, and begin the hero's journey. To awaken his will. It's what we need. What you need. So, let's take that personal motivation that you have, along with that reasoned trust, to awaken our will, to apply ourselves in the best way possible, the most fun, enjoyable way, seeking truth beyond all else, as a way of being that we will take with us to our reading today and every day on this channel. Let's take that with us as we jump into chapter 4 and look at the 4th category, because there are 12 stages in that method of philosophical midwifery that can use that latent ousia and logos that is existing in our problems, keeping us trapped in the fate. That's the double-edged sword. We can utilize that in midwifery by following these 12 steps, which are great to do. Practice it. Right opinion is a good guide anyway. But we also want to nail it down in our own understanding, to see through it, gain a mastery of it, so we can use it for ourselves and others. Which means taking these 12 steps and seeing if we can fit the dialectic into it. Can we see 12? If we see 4 categories: definition, demonstration, division, and conclusion, synthesis, analysis, within these 12. That's been the kick we've been on in the last couple of episodes. And let's jump into it. Thank you for joining me, by the way. Thank you for using your life energy and will and motivation to be here. Whenever, wherever you are watching this video. Here's the text. Here we go. From the opening of chapter 4. The Pathologos has a structure, has a function, and goal that is the same in all Pathologos problems. Because of this basic commonness, we often speak of the morphology or form of such problems. Questions designed to surface the particulars of our Pathologos problem help us to fill out the nature of the problem. Again, dream analysis helps. And seeking our most meaningful goals is necessary to fill out those particulars. To be able to come to somebody in the game and say, hey, I was trying to do this thing with excellence. These are the blocks that came up. Let's do some tasty, fun, juicy midwifery, shall we? And they'll say yes. And they'll say, what do I get out of it? And you'll say, I'll buy you a coffee. And they'll say, deal. By following a method that stresses the order, so we're learning an order by, which is understanding, finding the hierarchical arrangement of the parts, just as we mentioned in the introduction, there is an order, a hierarchical arrangement of those stages of development. Nihilism isn't just as good as the third hypothesis, as providence, logos. Materialism isn't just as good as anything above it. You get it. You get it. So we're looking for the order as we go in these 12 stages. So a method that stresses the order of questions. The subject can anticipate the direction of the dialogue themselves and assist in the delivery of their problem. Therefore, there are also times when the midwife adapts the basic thumbs up, basic design of the questions to meet the particular needs of the subject, and it is at such times that the method itself becomes a map to chart the direction of the dialogue.
You've been a bad little girl and you're getting a vigorous spanking right now?
You shouldn't be saying that every time.
I'm cute. Like, it's cutie
Okay.
pie.
Fair enough. Therefore, there is no need for the midwife to appear as the knower. Already, we're out of the Pathologos game. As if they understand the meaning of everything the subject reveals. It's more about curiosity and puzzlement, like we have been seeing in the Meno. Everything the subject reveals, therefore there is no need for the midwife to appear as the knower, as if they understand everything the subject reveals, because the method itself arrives at a field of data from which the subject can puzzle out the meaning. This is the clues. As we saw in the first stage of the 4 stages, define your problem, A, B, and C. We recognize that how we understand our problem is wrong. Our opinions, or what we believe to be our problem, and what is needed to solve our problem, is not right. If it were right, we wouldn't have the problem. So what we are doing instead is surfacing through this order of questions a field of data or right opinions. Now, it's not right opinions, but it's matches that level. So just as in philosophy, we have to realize we are ignorant, and then listen to Socrates talk about the true nature of self and reality to get the right opinions, and then piece it together through understanding in the dialectic, and then verify it in our own direct experience of knowledge or wisdom, and then apply all of that artistry to that experience of wisdom to graduate from philosophy to philophronesis, because even wisdom must have a cause. The second hypothesis ain't the end. But similar to that, we can, because it's a single art with 4 aspects, we can see that same structure within this. And not right opinions, because it's false, but analogically similar. In other words, we have to empty ourselves by realizing we can't solve the problem, to be able to knock on the door, or don't just knock, send a text first, hey? Hey, let's have coffee and talk about a problem that I have. The first 3 stages we saw is, what do you think your problem is? And then B and C helps us to realize we were wrong. By asking these questions, so you're only knocking on the door because you have some sort of recognition that you can't solve your problems, philosophical ignorance, the good kind of ignorance. But then you need the material or the clues, to use the Sherlock Holmes analogy, that you can piece together. So the questions surface those clues or right opinions in philosophy, but clues here. The field of data from which the subject can puzzle out the meaning of and the answers to his or her problem. It is in this sense that the midwife only assists another in the birth of an idea and does not offer answers and interpretations. Hooray. In following this procedure, the subject can be confident that the direction of the dialogue conforms to the art of philosophical midwifery, which means that you're playing a part, and speaking from personal experience, it's fucking important. Because this is a most meaningful activity. Even the midwife can find themselves getting stuck in a knowing way of being that they will be fighting tooth and nail to never, ever give up. Because that's how the problem works. And the difference is, you as the subject or the pregnant party have come here saying, look, I have seen how important my goal is. I know the stakes. I really want to go through this process of letting go to what I've been holding on to so that I can reach something more meaningful. Discover my more meaningful, more fun, more excellent self. A midwife might not be at that level. In other words, they might not have those stakes yet. And so when they get stuck while doing this meaningful activity of midwifery, we need to be able to say, hey, look, these are the methods, this is the strategy, this is the map. I think you're deviating from it. Either by acting against the stages that we are learning or the principles inherent. Super important. So super important in order to do this successfully is to do your best to read this, learn it, memorize it, master it, and all that, which is a lot of fun, of course. It's the fun that we have. All the cool people are doing it. Yeah. And the author of this book, before he passed away, made sure I learned that lesson the hard way, which was weird to go through. Go through midwifery with people who don't know this, who don't have the integrity to follow the principles, or with yourself not having mastered the stages and principles, so you can't say specifically, hey, look, you're in a block here, this is the stage. So very important. Or don't do it. Experience what it's like to go through midwifery with a without that understanding. Now you still have success. Just this activity is going to be great anyway. But there'll come a point where the midwife will hit their block, and it will be really helpful to have this. And of course, if the midwife themselves are blocked from reflecting on their own block within the process of midwifery, you need to be able to point, hey, chapter 4, let's look at it. If they say no, you have to say, fuck off. See ya. Not fuck off, but a polite way of saying fuck off. Because you have to. You have to recognize you're not really doing midwifery if you haven't recognized that midwifery is the most important thing we can do. And if you don't, and you don't understand the pathologos, if you don't recognize that the pathologos will always surface the more meaningful the activity. Ipso facto, if you're a midwife, there'll come a point as you progress where you'll have to turn around and do midwifery yourself. Otherwise, the both of you will get stuck in arrested development. Hey, don't believe me. See how fun it is. See how not fun it is for yourself. But if you want to learn from other people's experience, fucking don't do it. It sucks. It sucks so bad. Now, I went through it in part because the author of this book was telling me to go through it. I didn't see why at the time, but yeah. So anyone else telling me to go through it, I would have been out the door. But anyway, there you go. So, by learning this map as well as the principles, you can, the subject can be confident that the direction of the dialogue conforms to the art. The dialectical method of midwifery presupposes the subject's willingness to participate in a joint venture of inquiry. That's the both sides. The recognition that the midwife will probably hit blocks too at some stage. Now, that's not to say that everything is a block, because then that would be a very easy way for the subject's pathologos to block their own development by saying, you're in a pathologos, which is a big danger. In fact, this is one of the biggest dangers in midwifery. Once you recognize that everyone has a pathologos and it specifically blocks the logos, then you can have an easy win button to every argument that the pathologos will fucking use to block its own discovery. I'm not listening to you, you're in a pathologos. You got to be careful of that too. The easy win button isn't an easy win. Simply saying you're in a pathologos isn't anything. It's not a thing. There are certain things that identify a pathologos different from other things. A repeating problem about the self, that blocks conversation. If they are using it to block conversation, it's not a pathologos that you have, it's something that they are using to block their logos, in principle. Now, I recognize most people won't be at the level of seeing the value of what I just said, won't understand the value of what I just said, but I'm saying it anyway, because fuck me. It sucks. It can destroy relationships. Literally. Because good relationships are bound by the love of understanding. And terrible relationships or relationships break down with the pathologos blocking the love of logos. So when it gets to a point where the Pathologos is pulling out all the stops and just pressing the I win button, the Pathologos button, you're in a Pathologos, get out of here. That's not anything. No. If you're in a Pathologos, you reflect on it together, following the procedure, following the orders of questions, following the art and principles in a joint venture of inquiry. Philosophy isn't a one-person game.
You're a wizard, Harry.
No, this one.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
We're all in this quest. And, yeah. It's not a one-person game. You don't have to solo level. You don't have to solo tank forever. Find someone in this game. Someone who can off-tank for you. And support while you're tanking. Red. The dialectical method of philosophical midwifery presupposes a subject's willingness to participate in a joint venture of inquiry into the nature, necessity of our problems, and interrelationships of the obstacles that we encounter when pursuing our most meaningful goals. Thus, the subject comes to understand philosophical midwifery. So not only do you go through the process to get the benefit of becoming free of your problems, you also develop an understanding of having gone through it, which reflects what we said in the introduction today of being a human being with the tragic problem. The double-edged sword, however, the unexamined life isn't worth living because you just get more entrenched in your problems, etc., etc. But the examined life means that all of these different stages of being that we experience as human beings, different states of mind, different feeling states, we move through as our understanding develops. So we necessarily have to understand that level we're on to see the nature of that level, the necessity of that level, the interrelationships of the problems of that level, in order to become free of that level to move on to the next one. Meaning we get an experience and understanding as evolving creatures, as evolving selves. So too, going through the experience of philosophical midwifery will require you at some stage to learn the process yourself, read the book yourself, because of those blocks I brought up from my own experience. Meaning not only are you experiencing what it's like to go through it, you're also developing an understanding, experience and understanding. States of mind and logos. Aphrodite and Apollo. The two-person game. Now, Aphrodite and Apollo come together to reach Hermes, so in every good relationship there are actually three people. You use those states of mind, insights of Aphrodite with the understanding mythologized. This is that fourth stage mythology. You use those states of mind mythologized by Aphrodite with the understanding mythologized by Apollo. They come together to reach Hermes. That's why there's always three people in a good relationship, because you're seeking that which you can come together to reach together. Otherwise, relationships are shit, because eventually you'll end up just trying to force the other person into your Pathologos model. And you'll play out your own Pathologos problems as you do that. Because that's the double-edged sword thing. Without doing this, you're just going to play out your problems. But if you are unified in a love of Hermes, which represents the dialectic, by the way, then you've backed a winner. Thus, the subject comes to also understand midwifery. Each stage of the dialectic is indicated by the bracketed capital letter that will be referred to in later sections of the book. So we've spent a couple of episodes nailing this down, because it's the map, but also as we continue to read, we're going to refer back to it as we go. So it's worth spending a few episodes really nailing this part down. It's a short chapter. Let's recap where we are so far. 1 or A, individuals who enter into this dialectic begin the process of inquiry by stating why they believe they've been unable to reach their goals. Why they believe. It ain't understanding at the beginning, right? That's why we need trust in the process, some reason for having gone through this, so we can awaken our will to go through this. Another three aspect thing. Another triad. So you start by defining what you believe to be your problem, why you believe you've been unable to reach your goals. And the footnote is, right, for like real newbies, you might have to educate the person a little bit. What exactly is a goal? What exactly is a problem? So they can answer this a bit better. Bit went in my nose. Oh, that's the good stuff. Have you ever tried sniffing Gatorade? That's the hardcore way of taking Gatorade. B2. When they cite a present example, hey, that thing that you've just defined, demonstration. Definition, demonstration. Just like the definition of pure mind is the second hypothesis. How it functions is the third in the gap. The providence through logos that we can connect to through this and through midwifery. Through dream analysis as well. So, A, define your problem, your belief. B, give a demonstration or a present example of the difficulties you experience when trying to achieve your goal. Then you are urged to, or we ask the questions that urge the person to, discuss 2 or more examples until the subjects realize there is something common that runs through these examples. Ooh. Starting to wake up a little bit. So division, sufficient time, or definition, the subject itself, the problem itself, self to self, self by self, self in relation to self. How does it function to others, self to others, or demonstration? Now, that others to others, that functioning, give more examples, other contexts. Really play out the dialect, play out the implications of that functioning. Sufficient time is allowed for the key ideas to unfold. And to reflect on the broader context in which they occur. So division. So what's the last stage? Conclusion. We have to synthesize that into something. Synthesis and analysis that we can relate back to our first definition to see where we missed the mark. D. So this is the end of that first dialectic, the definition dialectic, and the start of the demonstration dialectic. So we have those 3 elements, like that triad we talked about with Apollo, Aphrodite, Apollo, and Hermes, or Apollo, Aphrodite, and Hermes. But the next level in philosophy, once you've seen triads, is to find the monad above it. A good example of that is in the Republic, where we see that there are 3 virtues. Temperance. I'm not going to fill it out. You do that. We're going to read the Republic soon. But then in the Republic, Socrates goes on to say, hey, all of those three have to come together for a higher level, the virtue of justice. So the triad into a monad, giving you 4 stages. But that 4th element is of a higher level. So that's the principle of hyparxis. The top of one level is the beginning of the next. In a different way. That's the transition. In one world, this way of thinking is the best you can do. So, in the physical world, reasoned reflection on causes to understand problems and to demand principles that are followed to address problems that help people, that make people rational, that's the best sort of people out there in the world. They're the people who are the best. It's the highest you can be here. But also, it's the beginning of philosophy. You have to be that kind of person that values reason, understanding, solving problems, helping people. To want to help yourself. To want to help yourself through understanding. To begin this. So Socrates calls that the movement from the love of learning, philomathesis, to love of wisdom, philosophy. So in a similar way, the final stage of this dialectic, conclusion, will be the start definition of the next, which is neat. I think it's neat.
Hey, whoa. Who asked you? Okay, go ahead.
Nobody asked me. I just think it's neat.
Freaks.
So, they are encouraged, D, number 4. So the 4th of the define your problem, but also the demonstration stage. Should I write this on the board? No, you know what? I'm not going to write this on the board. I want it to be a bit confusing. The whole principle that we're learning here is you don't give the answers. You give the material that the subject, so long as they have the motivation, the reason for doing it, the trust in the process, and therefore awakening their will, that sort of person can draw the pictures themselves. I'm not going to draw it. Even though I have a blackboard. D4. They are encouraged to explore any difficulty that turns them away from their goal, making their failures inevitable. The difficulty is often the effect of the presence of negative thoughts, feelings, inappropriate actions. After subjects are somewhat familiar with midwifery, they can be led to reflect on the differences. This is the analysis part. The differences between the statement they gave in A of their problem and their description of the difficulties that turn them away from their goal in C, and synthesized in D. After subjects understand that problems are solvable, intelligible, understandable, that's the 2 parts. We have problems, tragic nature of humanity, but problems are solvable, the wonderful thing about being human. We can go through all of the stages of evolution in one lifetime. Worth it? Well, something of yourself must have thought it worth it to decide to come here. After they see that their problems are intelligible, understand their problems are intelligible, they can appreciate the difference. However, getting them to reflect back on their first definition and what they see is actually causing their problems without having reached a level of sophistication can be confusing and perplexing and get them butthurt is the technical name. they get all butthurt. They get hurt in their little butts.
The more holes, the better.
Yeah. E or so the second of the first of the second of the second triad, or E, which would be 5. After discussing the role this particular what? This particular state of mind that unifies those things previously. After discussing the role this particular state of mind has played in their lives, they are led to explore a past scene. Now, we have seen the clues and we've put it together. We've got a culprit. It's Moriarty, state of mind. We need to trace it back to his lair. His evil lair where he lives. And he makes his little webs, his spider webs of lies and deceit. Moriarty. How do we do that? We use that state of mind as our time machine, as our DeLorean through time, tracing back his footsteps. So, explore a past scene where we experienced it most intensely. That's the best one. Program that into your DeLorean and go to the moment where it was most intense. What's the most intense part of your life in Back to the Future? That dance where you made out with your own mother. The sexiest part of the movie. Right? And he plays the guitar. And he just makes out with his mum. Sexy stuff. So program that in. Find the highest, most intense experience of that state of mind. That's likely where Moriarty lives. Mixing metaphors. Who cares? If anyone has any problems with me mixing metaphors, say something in the chat right now or forever hold your peace. Oh, no one's saying anything. So I guess everyone is happy with me talking about Moriarty in a DeLorean going back to the future. Probably because it's awesome. It might be difficult for some subjects to identify that intense state of mind in a past scene because it might be a common feature of their whole past. In such cases, it's sufficient to ask if they can recognize it as part of their background, of their life, reminding them it's not unusual for these states of mind to be continuously experienced. I be nihilisming every day, yo. Every day I be nihilisming. Yeah, sure. Continuously experienced as the background of one's early life. Given this condition, a scene often surfaces when the subject is asked to reflect on a time where it was more intense than usual. If that fails, the midwife could pursue more examples of the problem in the present. So we're starting with the present problem, and we're tracing it back through the past. Because we have the motivation to do so, the will to do so, the trust in the process because of how it will affect our future. This use of present, past, and future is another triad, but also one of the tools that we use in dream analysis, further highlighting how significant it is to be doing dream analysis as you go. You gain more understanding of the tools that you use here, as well as guidance and clues in your problem too. So, how about some present examples of that state of mind, at play or at work? If such an approach is taken, more recent past scenes may be accessible and can be explored. Again, there may be times when a subject will not be able to surface such past scenes, and when that occurs, it's best to recognize it as an obstacle to recollection. Some past episodes seem to have formidable defenses against their being surfaced, in which case the midwife may either terminate the dialogue and suggest coming back to it later, or refer to a shrink who has some skill in sidestepping such resistances. Temporarily. Before deciding on the referral, the midwife can decide to explore the obstacle itself because the obstacle itself can be used as a manifestation of the pathologos. So we saw in D a kind of that our original definition is an example of our problem. So that's a self-referring thing. But also in E, a block could be an example of the problem that you can then explore. The obstacle of the exploration is itself a state of mind, Moriarty. And it too can be described and discussed in the same way as any past scene would be explored. The midwife should be trained to make such determinations or to refer the decision to another who can assist in that decision. Good to have friends on your team. F. So, A, B, C, D, E, F. The division of demonstration. So, that past demonstrations, looking for broader context, others to others. When these past scenes are reviewed, the ideas and themes that function in and through family roles begin to emerge, and the puzzles about their meaning surface. So now you're getting super puzzled. So division in the dialectic too is where you get most puzzled. So an example is Socrates will say, hey, do you know beauty? And someone will say, what do you mean by beauty, Socrates? And I'll give a definition. It's this. Oh. But then that might be sufficient. Then they'll go to the next stage of the dialectic. But maybe they don't understand what it is. And Socrates will give a demonstration. Oh, this is how it functions. If they're still stuck, then that's usually where he breaks it down into the arguments. He passes it out to show why it's the implications, if it is and if it isn't, to show the absurdities if it isn't, to show the beauty and necessity of it being. It's where the thing that changes your mind comes out.
Their positions and imagine people changing their positions and improving for the better.
That's where it comes out. So, the ideas and themes are starting to come out of the past experiences of that state of mind. And then the family roles begin to merge as they puzzle about their meaning, and the puzzles of the meaning surface. It is by challenging the subject to face these puzzles. This is difficult. Why? Well, if the pathologos is the strongest force in the universe, even more powerful than enlightenment, and we learnt it in our childhood tied to family roles, this is going to be difficult. But I don't want to challenge the family way of being. I like the way that we're loving each other. I don't want to challenge the implications of mummy and daddy, Trump. Whoops. I mean, difficult. But worth doing. This is maturity. This is seeking truth. This is not blind loyalty to some clan leader or cult leader, even if it's the one you love. Again, you need the motivation to do this. So challenging to face the puzzles and to conclude about the meaning of their recollections. If you do this, what you get is you remove your distortions of the way of seeing and your distortions of remembering the past. So, what's the definition? State of mind. How does it function? Most intense time through your past. Broader implication, tied to family roles that you will see through the ideas and themes as you explore it more. The ideas and themes are the divisions, connection to family roles is the puzzle. Puzzle about it and conclude, and your reward will be a removal of distortions of your past. As the in G, so this will be the synthesis and analysis or conclusion of the demonstration of your problem, and also be the new definition in the division stage, stage 3. As the distortions are reduced, a new way of perceiving the past becomes apparent. Now this highlights the fact that this is a human thing. It isn't a programming thing. Or a purely rational thing like in philosophy. Like we said, Socrates saying, hey, do you know beauty itself? What is it? Here's a definition. I don't know it. Oh, I'll explain it. Here's how it functions. Demonstration. On board? Not quite. Here are the divisions. The argumentations, the logic, the reasoning that follows. If it is or if it isn't, that can lead you to a conclusion to get you to change your mind.
Imagine people changing their positions and improving for the better.
Whereas midwifery takes that reasoning and adds the human element to it as well, which means this division, or the what you get, the changing of the mind, is a new way of perceiving. That's the new definition. You have a new way of perceiving now. So the third stage, the division stage, is categorized by you can other to other. You can use it. You can... The first 3, self to self. What's the problem? The second, how does it function? Through a state of mind, through your past, tied to family roles. Conclude. If you do, the next 3, division. You can use that self to other, the function, for other to other, other to other, other context. You can now do it. You can be a human being doing stuff in the world, testing your conclusions, testing the conclusions you've made about these puzzles. You've leveled up. So what do you do with this new definition? What's the new definition? Less distorted perception of the past. You can use it. Demonstration. H. Connections between the similarities of past and present scenes can now be made and explored for their meaning. Oh my goodness. These past scenes, all the way through the past, all of the capers that Moriarty has pulled along the way, and the most intense scene tied to family role dynamics from my earliest remembering, can be connected to the present. I'm using this definition, this less distorted perception, to connect it to my present. I'm functioning with it to make a meaningful connection. Because that's the pathologos. The pathologos binds you to your past. Make America great again, back in the past. Remember past? Remember Blockbuster? Remember things were good in the 90s? Every fascist says that. Hitler says it. Trump says it. Bush said it. Fascist or right-wing parties, groups, dictators, tyrants, use this to fuck with people, to manipulate people. It's always past. That's why they can't change their minds, why they get stuck in a loop, become NPCs. It's stagnant, doesn't go anywhere. Now we saw that is the stagnant analogy, A is to B as A is to B, from the previous chapter, chapter 3. Whereas the true model of learning, A is to B as B is to C, Diotima taught Socrates as Socrates teaches us, as we teach our loved ones and friends, as they can teach everyone else, that progresses. That's the true teaching analogy, or the true model of learning. The Dharma successorship, because Dharma also implies a spiritual aspect to it. So what? Well, so we have this new definition, a new perception of our past. We want to use it, demonstration, functioning, to connect past and present. That's what we need to see for ourselves and understand, to become free by seeing the necessity of us having the problem given our past, which means no space for blame games, no place for forgiveness or sin or punishment or any of that horse shit, or concentration camps or prisons or slave labor. All of those fascists looking for an excuse to hurt people. No. There's a necessity for you having your problem given your past. Always. Because it's a rational, understandable world we live in. Of course it is. Your toaster breaks. You don't send your toaster to a prison camp. You understand what was the cause. And if you realize, oh, hang on a second. If I plug my toaster into that board, which has 18 different outlets, it will always break down. It has to break down. It necessarily must break down because it's overloading the circuit board. It's like that. The movement from barbarism, rejecting understanding, a war against intelligence and mind and causes, in order to justify sadistic violence against ourselves and our fellow man. Barbarism, the stage of evolution of the fourth hypothesis that we are moving out of by using our problems to awaken this kind of reflection. Why? Because our problems gives us the motivation to do it. If we weren't stuck in our problem, we would never get out of that level of hypothesis. Therefore, problems themselves are necessary. Not only are our specific problems necessary given our past, meaning our problems are understandable, meaning no barbarism or blame or punishment or any of that horse shit, forgiveness, I'm sorry, fuck off with your I'm sorry. What are you sorry about? Nothing. Stupid. Give it up. For the love of understanding. That's the fun game.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
The more holes, the better.
See? Somehow. So not only are our specific problems necessarily this case, by the way, same principle in the division stage in philosophy. When somebody doesn't understand that, for instance, in the Meno and the Phaedo, learning is actually remembering. Socrates says, hey, you know what learning is remembering? Wait, yeah. Maybe definition of learning, yeah. Learning is remembering. What does that mean? Here's a demonstration. Do you recognize beauty? Sure. Anyone teach you what beautiful is? Or did you just see it? Oh, yeah. Well, hang on. I suppose, but I don't see how it's necessary that because of that, all learning is remembering. Now we break it down into the arguments. That's the division. And you'll see how either it's necessary and beautiful that the arguments follow in a certain way, or if you take the opposite, that learning isn't remembering, it's something else, whatever the fuck you think it is, the opposite of whatever that is, you'll see that that's absurd. Some people call that Socratic humor. If you push the implications of the opposite, you'll see how an absurdity follows. And there are some wonderful people out there who do that to help turn people around, to see their positions are crazy by pushing the implications. This is what you think. Sometimes they do funny voices, and that's lots of fun. So too, we are in the division stage of midwifery here, GHI. And we are using our less distorted perception of our past to see how our problems are necessary, which is that division stage. It necessarily follows X, Y, and Z, so you can change your mind about learning like our current model that learning is like pouring stuff into a brain of a kid, and rather than realizing that we know everything anyway, it's a matter of creating the conditions of self-reflection through the logos, through the dialectical structure, in a supportive, fun environment, without any blame ever or punishment ever, always allowing for logos and questions to create the conditions for remembering. Everyone is meaningful. Everyone can turn around. Everyone's important. Everyone is divine and noble. Necessarily so if you follow the stages of that division of the dialectic. And that happens in the Phaedo and the Meno. So we can remember it, learn it, nail it down, and use it in our profession, in our relationships, and to ourselves. Anytime you feel like punishing yourself or blaming yourself, pull out that dialectic to be a kind friend to yourself. Anytime someone else that you love is beating themselves up or is saying, I'm sorry, no. Or I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I can't do this, I'm a dumb person, I'm too much of a redneck. No, listen. Here are the stages of the division of the definition, learning is remembering, demonstrating in the experience of Usia turning around to no being, necessarily so through these arguments of division. To yourself, to others, and let's make it an even triad in your activities in the world. You're a teacher, teach it. You have a teacher, teach them. So that's what we're doing here. So number 1, or G, you start with a new perception, new, less distorted way of perceiving your past. You can use that to make connections between the past and present. Look for the meaning. Okay, my obligatory spam message. Every stream I seem to get one. Thank you, Twitch, for, I don't know. Really, thank you, capitalism. And now the division of that. The division of using your less distorted perception to make connections between past and present, tying you to the past, the distorted analogy, keeping you stagnant, keeping you in the cesspool of slop. Well, you can make connections between the past and present. These meanings can now be seen as solutions or hypotheses that account for the failure to achieve success, excellence, and the individuals are urged to authenticate their hypotheses in their experience as they pursue their goals. That's the human part. This whole thing is your human part. Your human perception is now more clear. Your ability to make connections between past and present. You have now. And you can do that argumentational process to find solutions by puzzling about the connection between your past and present to create solutions or hypotheses. Oh, it's not because I'm rubbish, myself is rubbish, my mind is rubbish, or my reasoning is rubbish, or my goals are rubbish. Make it an even quadrad. It's actually necessary for me to have those problems, and beautiful in a certain kind of way. How can it be beautiful? There's a question you'll have to see for yourself in this stage. So no blame, no punishment, no barbarism. It's absolutely necessary that you had your problems given your past and the family roles. Also, it's absolutely necessary that humans have pathologous problems to create the condition for us to have the motivation to go through this process, to learn this which is difficult, to go through every stage of evolution within one lifetime. That's a kind of beautiful thing we get as human beings. It's a unique space we have within the universe as this kind of species that we are, having evolved in the way that we are. Maybe there's a reason for humanity and it's worth saving from extinction, which will necessarily follow if the other side is the case. So if learning isn't remembering, if problems aren't necessary and beautiful individually and as a collective, what's the implications? What's the negative? Oh, we have human problems because you are a bad person. Emma?
I've been a bad little girl.
Exactly.
It's sad. And I'm sad for you.
I'll be sad for you if you believe that, because that's the other part of the division. So that's the Socratic humor. If it were the case that the opposite follows, what would happen? Oh, humans have problems because they're bad. Self is bad, mind is bad, reason is bad. So we get to kill the Palestinians. We get to enslave the black people. We get to impoverish and exploit the working class. We get to put the foreigners in the concentration camps in Florida, which will just lead to nuclear holocaust, Armageddon, and the extinction of our whole fucking species. Necessarily so. That's the absurdities that follow this other method of learning or way of accounting for human problems. Retributive justice, punishment, blame. All of the most stupid, stupid fucking baby-brained people who have never reflected on themselves, never gone through the work of learning how to think, of participating in intelligence. They mistake cruelty for wisdom, because that's the same cruelty they experienced necessarily, given their past, from their parents and teachers at their earliest age, like Achilles. And until they reflect in this way, they will think, oh, this same level of disgusting cruelty is a mark of wisdom, like mummy and daddy. That gives you Hitler and Putin and Stalin and Trump. Necessarily so. Not to blame them or do their way of solving problems, drop a bomb on their head, put them in a concentration camp. But isn't that giving a taste of their own medicine? Yeah, it would be. You can show that in the division of what follows of their way of being. Hey, if it follows that bad people who've done bad things get to be punished and put in concentration camps, then hey, haven't you done many, many bad things, Putin, Trump, Netanyahu, all of you guys? Therefore, just using your logic, we are helping you by torturing and murdering you. Right, guys? Oh, you don't like it when it happens to you? We are showing you the absurdities that follow your ignorant position. Showing the necessity of the other position. That all human problems are understandable, solvable, and necessarily follow given your past. And even that has to happen necessarily by being a human being, because pathologos is part of the game. And within a greater level of whole, Emma?
I've been a bad little girl.
No.
Cute. Like,
I'm too pure.
cutie
You've been a
pie.
bad little
The
girl
more
and you're getting
holes,
a
the better.
vigorous spank.
Okay, that one drop where she says the more holes, the better. The next level of whole, not just your individual problems are necessary, given your past that we can see for ourselves and test our seeing in our direct experience. So it's not just belief, it's not just necessary understanding, but our species will always have problems necessarily tied to the pathologos, necessarily tied to the past, necessarily tied to that stagnant analogy, A is to B is A is to B. But in a greater level of whole, our species itself must have the principle of pathologos playing out as the reflection of the logos and ousia to A, give us what we need to awaken our return, but also to create the conditions for the motivation needed to learn this art and go through every stage of evolution within one lifetime. If we can do that as a species, that might be for an even more beautiful and necessary whole, as some sort of guiding force within the universe itself. What sort of person do you want as a midwife? Someone who's gone through all of the stages of hypotheses of Parmenides, all of the levels of ignorance, seen how every level has its own state of mind, levels of enlightenment, levels of being, levels of feeling, has its own logical structure, it has its own internal cohesion, but necessarily has to exist, but also isn't it because it is flawed. And so in understanding the necessity and problems of that level, you can go to the next stage. Wouldn't you want as your midwife someone who's gone through all of them? To both understand and have experienced them all? If we as human beings get to go through that because of the principle of pathologos, wouldn't any alien species want that species as some sort of guiding midwife for everything in the universe? So that we can rationally, fairly, with fun, with joy, no more fucking poverty or exploitation or dumping half our food into the ocean because it make numbers on computer go up for billionaires. No more of that fucking horseshit. Pouring pollutants into our air and water because it saves a few bucks for the capitalists. That's so fucking stupid. None of that. Instead, a level of experience and understanding that perhaps only humanity can go through, allowing us to tickle the boxes, go through all the levels of development, gaining a certain level of mastery that will allow us to care for everyone, have a fucking awesome time here.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
Full of joy and whimsy and childlike wonder.
What feminists want is
You've been
to
a bad little
Stop. Having fun here, but also caring for all diverse species on our planet, the planet itself, caring for all of the other animals who are going through their learning processes, animals waking up to language, like the ones with the buttons, like the birds that can talk, like, oh my god, the cockatoos that have the iPads on Instagram. Oh, aren't they the best? They're so cute. A steward, a guide, a caretaker for all life on our planet, but not just our planet and having a kick-ass fun time while we do it because we have the resources, understanding, technology, and maybe with this, the will and ability to meet all human needs with almost zero work, freeing us to have a kick-ass fucking time and do this. So we all get to have fun. No more slavery, misery, concentration camps, or suffering. There'll still be pain as a part of going through this, but not suffering. But also to steward and guide all intelligent species, developing all through the universe. Because we have what is necessary and beautiful when perceived at that level of whole, greater level of whole, for going through each level of stage, both in experience and understanding, or going through all of the stages of evolution as a human being. The double-edged sword. We have the worst fucking irrational bullshit. Animals don't do this to each other. Animals don't have fucking concentration camps. Animals don't pour half of their food into the ocean that could feed our entire fucking planet. Animals don't have one billionaire living in some country on the other side of the world owning all of the houses in my street while people in my street sleep in the cold. Animals don't do that. Animals don't set up alligator Auschwitz in Florida. But animals can't also go through all of that level, all of the stages of ignorance and the suffering, there's negative states of mind, inappropriate actions, what is it? Feelings, where is it? Back here. They also don't go through all of the negative thoughts, feelings, and inappropriate actions and inevitable failures, of each stage. Meaning we have a double-edged sword as being humans. Meaning there's something as every single human being living that had to make the decision, I'm coming back as a human. I must have within me what it takes to face that double-edged sword. to face Darth Vader and become the greatest Jedi. Which may be both beautiful and necessary for some species in our universe to do that, to become the guide and steward for all intelligent species, not just the animals here. Our whole universe. Having gone through all of the stages of ignorance to enlightenment, or all of the stages of evolution. So 3 levels of necessity and beauty to our problems that should change your mind.
Where's the joy? Where's the...
Wait.
Imagine people changing their positions and improving.
Changing our minds and improving for the better. Equally so, you can show the absurdities that follow, or the division stage, of the opposite. Oh yeah, blame is a thing. Punishment is a thing. Prisons are a thing. Wealth inequality is a thing. How will that play out? You'll get someone like Trump, notorious criminal and grifter, setting up Alligator Auschwitz in Florida to put people in who speak out against the genocide in Palestine. The best people. That's fucked. And eventually, you can only beat down with injustice and lies people for so long until they fight back, which could end in Armageddon. We can play out the implications of our unexamined lives, our unexamined pathologos, to the extinction of our whole species. That's the absurdity that follows. Just look at the people in charge. Look at Netanyahu and Putin and Hitler and Trump and all these, Stalin and all these people. They are the most comically terrible people. You wouldn't want them babysitting your children for one evening. Why the fuck do we get them to babysit everyone? Why do we give them guns and weapons and all of the monies? Trump, Bezos, fucking that Facebook weirdo. Why do they have all the money and therefore the power under capitalism? It's ridiculously absurd. We are doing that. We are seeing the absurdities that follow the other side. That problems aren't rational. What follows with knowing is being cruel to your kids like mummy and daddy were cruel to me because they were too fucking stupid to learn what intelligence and benefit really is. And I don't want to challenge them because I love them. So I'm going to vote for Trump and then beat children like I was beaten. Fuck off. You can't do that and survive as a species. You can't have both. You can't simultaneously hold the belief that cats and dogs have sex and give birth to puppies that way, and also be a vet, be a competent vet. You can't have that blind loyalty to figures that you only are blindly loyal to because they resemble your parental figures when you were too young, because you haven't gone into the DeLorean, found Moriarty in your early scene through this process. You can't allow for there to be a right wing, a fascist party, and also survive. You can't hold the two together. They are incommensurate. They are incompatible. Necessarily. And beautifully so. Thank fuck. If we do become the steward of the universe, the guide, the guru for all species, do we want Trump in charge? Fuck no. Can you imagine? Don't. I mean, make a movie to show the implications of that absurdity. Just as you can't simultaneously believe that cats and dogs have sex and be a vet. You have to sacrifice one. Just as individually, that's why we have to seek our most meaningful goals. If your goal is meaningful, your goal for yourself, you can't simultaneously hold the belief that yourself is inadequate, your mind is inadequate, your reasoning is inadequate, or your goals are not good enough, or your goals should be sacrificed to be selfless. Selfish, selfless horseshit. You can't have both. You can't be your true self and believe yourself to be inadequate in any way, because that's not the self. You have to sacrifice one. And our species has been sacrificing our true goals. That's why we seek truth above all else. What midwifery allows us to do is recognize the unsuspected existence of that negative horse shit that's incompatible with our highest vision, our highest way of being, our truth, so we can get rid of the bad one. Kick that off the boat. Jettison that's weighing us down from our balloon that's flying up to space. Good metaphor. So what are we doing? We're understanding the third category of midwifery, the division stage. We are applying it to philosophy to see how that's the stage where Socrates shows the beauty and necessity that follows what's true to change people's mind, or the absurdities and humor that follow if the opposite is the case, which can also change, either one can change minds. We're using our insight from philosophy to understand the process of the most important thing, removing that bullshit view of ourselves, tied to suffering, ignorance, absurdity, and the extinction of our whole species. As well as seeing or pushing the implications of what's true, that number one, all problems are understandable and necessarily follow the causes on our lives going all the way back through childhood to our family roles. Therefore, no blame or punishment or Auschwitzes anymore. No more of that baby shit. To see that, but also to see that there is a necessity for everyone to be in that way. No more prisons, because of the principle of pathologos for everyone. And the third level, there is a necessity for our species to have to go through this horseshit of recognizing of the suffering that follows in the negative, to wake up to the midwifery. So because of the necessity of that as the motivating factor, of the reason for having trust in this process, and awakening your will to go through the process, getting off your butt and doing it, which we said we need to do this game, but also our whole species has that. The necessity for our species to have the principle of the pathologos, giving us the condition to go through every stage of evolution, evolving entirely in one lifetime, and becoming perhaps the beacon of light for the whole universe, the guiding force to the whole universe. There is a role that humanity must be playing here for us to exist in a rational world that has these principles. So we're seeing not just the necessity, individually, collectively, and as a species. We're seeing the beauty that can only be seen from that higher level of holes, Emma.
The more holes, the better.
Got it. The more holes, the better. See? It's that level of beauty we need to transcend to really fully free ourselves from our problems. Otherwise, there'll be some, well, maybe my pathologos was worse. There's no worse pathologos. It's just pathologos. Well, maybe I can't get on my pathologos. Of course you can. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Well, maybe we can get out of our pathologos because I'm a white person and it's the other people that, you know, that their heads are shaped differently, which means that Jordan Peterson says that the other races are less intelligent. So maybe, of course, that's fucking horseshit. Get out of that. Everyone is the same in this way. Necessarily and beautifully so, which should be sufficient to change your mind. If it's not, that is an evidence of Moriarty getting in the way. You need to get in your DeLorean, chase that shit back to find out why you are racist, Peterson, or sexist, Peterson. Well, they're all sexist too. Hate-filled. Cruel. Again, not to blame them, That's why they lie, by the way. They never want to take accountability because they think that they will be approached with the same kind of love and care that they do to others. Not the game anymore. We can't do that. It just leads us to Armageddon. You've had the biggest problems, you've done the worst injustices, then you've got to do the most midwifery, son. Which also means you have the potential to be the greatest guide. That's the story of Achilles, the worst possible asshole. Shouldn't say asshole, they're very important, serve an important function. The worst possible joke. Joke? Jerk. The biggest meanie. Achilles turns himself around and becomes the best guide as not the participant in the Olympics after they've won the war, but the judge at the Olympics, bringing people who are competing together, elevating them all to a higher state of excellence because he went through it all. That's our standard. That's excellence. Can be tough. But if that's the all evolution in one lifetime game that we're on, necessarily for our human race to play our role within the universe, yeah, there'll probably be even worse shit happening on other planets and other galaxies and all that shit. This is our training. Necessarily so, rationally, beautifully. Beautifully so if you can transcend the level of holes. That's beauty. Aphrodite. Rationally so, Apollo. Allowing us to come together to steward everything. That's Hermes. That's the art of the dialectic.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. So that's the principle that we're learning here, because we're seeing that while our individual problems that plays out individually, the fact that we have an art means that there is a, what's the word? It's a fancy word. Morphology or form that allows us to do this thing. It's true for everyone, everywhere. Even women's. Even Achilles's. So, do we need to see all of that to become free of our problem? Maybe. At least at the first level, we need to see the necessity of our problem so we stop blaming ourselves and buying into the negative one. And we can have fun along the way, making fun of that negative one. Oh yes, blame and punishment, yes. Let's make fun of you idiots. You right-wingers with your cruelty. Let's make fun of you. Not because of yourself, but because of the implications of that way of being and that cruel way of thinking, which we can understand as one of those 9 levels of hypotheses of development. And they have to be there. There has to be those people in the world. Provided we can go through this process of rationality to see that there is a providence behind all of it. That's the necessity in beauty, and that's the training of the art. The art of dialectic, the art of philodianoia, the love of understanding that can bind together your soul, your relationships, your loved ones, our species, and maybe even our entire cosmos. On that note, thank you so much for joining me. We'll get back into this chapter next time and see where it takes us. But a good reflection on what is required in this process and highlighting the theme that you need to have a kind of trust, a kind of openness, trust. But you also need some sort of motivation. That's the double-edged sword of being human. Yes, we get all the tragedy, but we also get everything we need to overcome that. For our own development individually, collectively, and as a species within a greater whole. That needs to be seen to to awaken our will. The will to play this game, the noblest game, the best game in town. I hope you join me, because
You're a wizard, Harry.
you're a wizard, Harry, and you're a Sherlock Holmes, and you're a time-traveling DeLorean guy who wants to make out with his mother and play guitar, and you're also...
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
We're all looking for someone to share in this adventure. We're all looking for Jedis, because a champion team defeats a team of champions. Thank you so much. Well, by the way, team of champions, the analogy champion team defeats a team of champions was because of the football game that was on tonight. But of course, we wouldn't call the injustices of individuals or the Pathologos a champion, but maybe loosely, because we did say there is a kind of Usia and Logos inherent within the Pathologos that we need to make use of to get out of it. So we could make that analogy work, I suppose. But yeah, so we'll get back into this division stage. So we're on stage 3 next time, and then maybe we'll get into the last stage, hit all 12 of the stages of solving human problems that we're all here to learn and master, and share with your friends. Please, whatever level of insight you're on, whatever level of curiosity you have, whatever level of motivation and will you have, share it with your loved ones and friends. It's for all of us. It's not a one-person game. And I hope you'll join us. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.